definitely got a radio voice.
Oh, good. I don't think I do. I don't think I have a radio voice, but we do what we can. We work with what we got.
Exactly.
And what I've got is the voice I was born with. Damn it.
Damn it.
Whoa. Okay. All right.
Okay.
We're going to keep. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to another episode of Secret Level. This is a GeekTyrant production, and I am your host, Joey Parr. And joining me today in this wonderful third episode of greatness is none other than the great, fantastic, amazing Billy Fisher. Hello,
what
Billy.
up, homies? What's happening? Here we go for episode 3.
Yeah.
We had to get through ETs, right? We got to come back and play.
3 episodes in, and we're ready to move on to the next movie.
Let's do it.
I'm actually really excited about this one.
Me too. Like, I don't think this movie gets enough credit for what it is.
I don't either. Not many people talk about it. Whenever I bring it up in conversation, most people don't know what I'm talking about. But it was a favorite movie of mine growing up. Before we go any further, the movie that we're going to discuss today is Terry Gilliam's classic film, Time Bandits.
Yes. I mean, if any of you are familiar with anything Terry Gilliam has done as far as Monty Python, movies, skits, what have you, you know it's automatically going to be out there. But for some strange reason, this movie is a hit with children. Like, when I was a kid, I had no idea what was going on, but it was one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to be Kevin. That's all I wanted to do.
I remember watching this movie multiple times when I was growing up. I loved it. And then there was a stretch of time where I just didn't watch it. Like, there were years that went by between being a kid and somewhere in my, I don't know, late teenage years, maybe like 17, 18 years old, where I rediscovered the film again and rewatched it. It was just like, what is this madness that I loved so much when I was a kid? And then more years go by and I watch it again recently and I'm like, what the hell is this madness, insanity that I enjoyed so much as a kid? And I still enjoy it now. Like, I'm watching it and I'm a kid again as I'm watching it. And I'm like, this is incredible storytelling and just wild and crazy. And the imagination just explodes all over the place. And so much is happening and my brain is melting.
And that's the best part about it, because you and I, we watched it when we were teenagers.
Yeah, the first time I watched it since I was a kid was with you.
Yes. And we both had the same reaction when it was over. We both collectively just were like, what? What? Like, you, so much happens in such a short amount of time. So much information is thrown at you. Visually, it's stunning, but it's also thrown in with really intelligent conversations between, the characters. There's an actual story behind it, but you get so lost in the visuals that he's hitting you with that sometimes the story gets lost. But when you get a little bit older, you listen to the story and you're like, well, this is genius.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because when you're a kid and you're watching it, it is the visuals. It's the adventure. It's the kids' toys coming to life. It's like all these things. Like, this kid had all these toys and cool posters and stuff in his room. It's like, that was me. I had these cool toys and posters in my room and I wanted them to come to life and, have these grand adventures. So watching this kid as a kid was like, man, this is the life I really want, is going on this journey with this group of this group of jerks.
They truly were. Oh, man.
And going on this insane adventure. And then watching it later on in life as a teenager on the verge of being an adult, you're watching it in a different mindset where you're like, what is this? Like, there's something here, and I love it still, but it's still so weird. And then watching it again as an adult, it's like so much appreciation for what it is, right?
Yep.
You understand all of the jokes now. You understand what is being said in the story and the lessons that are being taught in it and things of like that, right?
Yeah, and this is just watching it recently when you and I were talking about it, I realized how heartbreaking the main character's life is. Like, I wanted to cry for this kid. I was like, he is the epitome of all what our parents wanted us to be when we were that age. He was smart. He was interested in the world. He wanted to find out what was going on, and he was completely ignored. And I was like, I got to spend more time with my kids.
And well, there's the thing, right? And we're gonna get into this later because at the very end of the movie, something happens to this kid, and you're like, okay,
Yeah, I mean,
that happened. And we'll
so-
get into that later, though.
yeah,
Before we kind of dive into the movie, though, again, this is secret level. What we do is we talk about the movies we have enjoyed watching over the years, stuff we grew up with, things like that. We dive in and dig in to those movies and find little known facts about them. And then we just talk about those things. So that's basically what this podcast is. But before we jump into that for Time Bandits, Billy,
yes, sir.
what's something this week that you have discovered or you want to talk about that you've come across?
Okay, so I'm in certain things, I'm a late bloomer. But the one thing I want to talk about is I just started watching Dexter.
Is this your first time?
First time. I've never seen a single episode.
Are you serious?
I didn't know what it was about.
What? How did you?
But okay, so I did it on purpose. I remember we went to Comic-Con a few years ago, and
A few years ago.
James-
This is, I know exactly what you're talking about, the scavenger hunt.
Scavenger Hunt.
But that was like a long time ago, but go ahead.
Okay, so in Comic-Con for one of the seasons of Dexter, they had a huge scavenger hunt throughout San Diego, and I really wanted to do it, but our buddy James was like, don't do it. You can't go into the scavenger hunt not knowing anything because it ruins Dexter. It ruins the plots. It ruins the plot twists and the intricacies of it because you're going to have to know certain things from the series. And he's like, go into it blind. Don't ever read up on it. Don't know when you go into it. Just go into it with an open
So
mind.
you don't know anything.
I didn't know
Have you avoided spoilers and all that stuff?
everything.
Wow. I'm
Everything.
impressed.
The only thing that I know, and I'm okay with this, is that they're making another season for it to make up for the bad ending of the last season, which is fine.
I was okay with the ending. I was fine with it. I wasn't one of
okay,
the,
see,
I wasn't one of
that
the
makes me
people
happy.
that was like, oh, I mean, it wasn't great, but I wasn't like, it wasn't going to ruin my life.
Right. Okay, see, that's positive. But here's my thing. The only
The
it
TV
is.
show finale didn't ruin my life. That makes it positive.
Yeah, it's positive because it ruined other people's lives. I've told other people that I started watching it and they're like, oh, you're going to hate the ending. I'm still mad about I'm like, you know what? But there's another season coming.
Yeah.
Get over it. Here we go. But yeah, I enjoy the series. I really enjoy the cast in it. The cast has been great. I do feel that maybe the actress playing his sister is not as strong of an actor as everybody else in it. She kind of gets drowned out by everybody else. But it goes on for a few more seasons, so maybe she gets better, and we're gonna be okay. But that's the only downfall that I've seen.
Okay.
But
That's
we
awesome.
just finished
That's
yeah, we
awesome.
finished the first season.
I'm happy. I'm happy that you're watching this finally.
Yes, and
It's just has your wife ever seen it?
no.
Okay.
No, we were literally just scrolling through streaming. We were like, what are we going to binge right now? Because we've been binging Luther. We binged Curb Your Enthusiasm. We've been binging all these classic shows. And we're like, well, we've never seen anything about Dexter. So let's try it. And we're hooked. So I just wanted to let you guys know I was excited about that. Now comes the part of the episode that I'm very excited about. How is Saint Elsewhere?
It's going weird, man.
Nice.
It's taking some very strange. I mean, it started off weird, with
Yes.
Birdman and all that stuff, building a nest in the hospital basement and stuff. And that was like season 1, right?
Right.
Like, well, how could it get any weirder from there? Well,
Uh-huh.
it it just did. I don't even know what's going on. Things are starting to get like kind of way out of control now because things are being said that I don't quite like wait, what is happening? Like there's this whole thing where kind of like the old doctor and the guy who's running the hospital ends up in the hospital, like, but the hospital's about to be torn down and they evacuate, they take everything out of it, but for some reason they leave this old guy who used to run it in the hospital in a room by himself with this wrecking balls and he's like running around like, oh, get me out of here. Like, what's going on? Like, what is going on? What is happening? You leave this one old man in the hospital. You're about to tear it down. I don't understand what's happening. He's like talking to other people, like he's this little kid or something. I'm like, what is that? It's like he's reverting back into this like childlike state. Like, what is going on right now? And then
Wait for you to see.
and then all of a sudden he's wearing a Superman costume and he's flying around the city. What is happening? This is so weird. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this has got to be the last I'm not really paying attention to what season I'm on. I'm just watching it. So I'm like, oh, this has got to be the last episode because they're tearing down the hospital. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you've got a whole year's the next season. I'm like, okay. Like, all right.
Fantastic.
They remodeled it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's why he was in there. He was remodeling. They were
And he's still like, even in this next, like the first couple episodes within this next season, he's like in a window and then flying around as Superman again. I'm like, what is happening? But, but since I've been watching, we've got Bruce Greenwood is now in it. Kathy Bates had a cameo. Very young Kathy Bates. Very interesting. She had Tourette syndrome in it, which was great. Will Wheaton made an appearance as like as a kid doctor.
Yep.
That didn't expect that. Yeah, man. I don't know what's going on. I'm enjoying it for the weirdness, but I don't know which way is up, down, left, right, whatever.
Fantastic.
And it's interesting too, because throughout the series, they've got this autistic kid in it who's been introduced, coming in and out. He's not in it all the time, but he's like in and out of it. But it is interesting how they portray autistic kids in the 80s.
Yes.
It's very different from what I know. Like they have this kid talking like Frankenstein, and I'm like, what? Like, this is weird.
Well, I mean, as we've said before, the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
The
other thing that's interesting is, we have tons of medical shows right now, right?
Right.
And they all deal with these issues of like the society is having to deal with these days. You know what I mean?
Right.
What are the hot topics in politics and things that we have to put in our show? And I'm watching this from the early 80s, and they're dealing with the exact same stuff that there's like the storylines are all recycled. And it's like, nothing's changed. Everything's, we're still seeing this in all the new medical shows. There's no originality happening anymore. Like,
no. And that's why I'm glad we get to talk about movies like Time Bandits. Because I challenge anyone to come up with a story remotely close to Time Bandits.
But I do, before we move on, one more thing I want to say about this is,
oh yeah, go.
There's a line that might be it's definitely my favorite line of dialogue in the TV show so far.
Okay.
It might be one of my favorite. It might be one of my favorite lines of all time.
Okay.
These two doctors and they're talking to each other, and an older one and a younger one. The younger one starts talking, and the older one says, "If you're gonna talk, shut up about it." And I'm like, that is my favorite line. If you're going to talk, shut up about it.
Oh man.
So anyway,
I
that's
need to
what
somehow bring that into my vocabulary. Like I need to bring this into my repertoire.
right?
Of
Like this
lines.
is one that I want to like lock in there for like a good time to bring up
Yep.
in a conversation with somebody. Anyway, let's move on to some Time Bandits conversation, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Time Bandits was released in 1980. It's described as a dark, irreverent adventure about imagination, bravery, and the nature of our dreams. It follows the time traveling adventures of an 11-year-old history buff named Kevin, who one night stumbles on 6 dwarves who emerge from his closet. They're former workers of the Supreme Being who have stolen a map that charts all the holes in the space time fabric, using it to hop from one historical era to the next in order to steal riches. Throughout the movie, they meet various historical and fictional characters, including Napoleon Bonaparte, Robin Hood, while the Supreme Being simultaneously tries to catch up to them and retrieve the map.
Th- That whole description of the movie
Yeah,
seems like complete nonsense,
I know.
but it barely even scratches the surface of what
I
happens
know.
in that movie.
I know.
It's fantastic.
And I have to say, the map, the design of the map is probably one of my favorite things ever.
Right.
I love that map design. And I was at one point when I was contemplating getting a tattoo, elements of
Mhm.
that map, I wanted that to be incorporated into it. I have a cool design for it, but I never
Right.
pulled the trigger on it.
That is kind of cool though, because it has a lot deeper meaning than just cool drawings,
Yeah.
tattooed on you.
Yep.
But yeah, I like that. So this is made by Terry Gilliam, who I don't know if a lot of you know, played Pansy in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. He was the only American member of the Monty Python troupe.
Yep.
But he created all of the drawings in Flying Circus, every weird painting, any weird animatic. That was Terry Gilliam. That came straight out of his mind.
And this was his first feature film that he made outside or wanting it to be outside of the Monty Python group. Even though
Right.
members of the group were in the film, this was something he kind of wanted to stand on its own and not be known as a Monty Python production, right?
Right. And it definitely stands on its own. I mean, there's it falls into what I call the Princess Bride problem, which is you don't know if it's a comedy, you don't know if it's a drama, you don't know if it's sci-fi or action adventure. It's all of it
It's
wrapped into one.
everything wrapped into
Everything.
one. Yeah.
And so there's no way of putting a label on it.
Yeah.
It's just fun. I mean, that's it.
It's interesting because I've heard because with the dwarves and the film and stuff and the Monty Python group, from what I understand, the dwarves are a commentary on the Monty Python.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Fidget is it's described. Fidget is the nice one, and is said to represent Michael Palin.
Uh-huh.
Randall is described as the self-appointed leader, and that represents John Cleese. Strutter is the acerbic one, and that represents Eric Idle. Og, the quiet one, represents Graham Chapman, while Wally represents the noisy rebel, and that represents Terry Jones. Then there's Vermin, the nasty, filth-lovey one, which represents Terry Gilliam.
Furman will eat anything.
Yep.
That was
But
fantastic.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that after watching the film. They definitely have all those traits, and kind of makes it keeps immortalizing the troop and what they're all about. I kind of like that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. And also, did you know that no studio wanted to make this movie?
That's not very shocking.
It's not.
I mean,
I can't even imagine reading that script and being like, oh yeah, this is going to be a huge hit. We got to make this.
yeah, how do you sell that to anyone? So all of a sudden, dwarves come out of a closet and they start pushing a wall that leads into a different dimension while being followed by a giant floating head. Um, yeah, I don't know how that's going to
So crazy. Yeah. I could see how it would be a hard sell,
Absolutely.
but the reason it got made was all thanks to George Harrison of the Beatles and Dennis O'Brien. They actually mortgaged their office building to raise $5 million to fund the film.
Which is crazy. So I read Eric Idle's autobiography,
Okay.
and he and George Harrison were best friends.
All right.
And what a lot of people don't know is that Harrison not only funded this movie, but he helped fund a lot of the Monty Python movies that came afterwards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he never really wanted the credit. He just loved the guys so much. He wanted to make sure their stuff kept going.
Ah, he's like the angel investor of the Monty Python group. I like it.
Absolutely. And so not only did the Beatles bring us great music, but they also brought us Monty Python.
Without George Harrison, there would be no Time Bandits or
I love it.
Flying Circus.
Right?
And I don't know why I'm talking in an English accent right now,
You're getting ready for Braveheart.
but I just feel like I need to because this whole movie had lots of British accents in it.
Oh, man. Such a beautiful movie.
So another thing about George Harrison's involvement with the film, on top of funding it, he only came on to set once, and that was it. He didn't get creatively involved with anything. He just wanted to give Gilliam the freedom he wanted to basically produce his art. And while Gilliam and O'Brien got in arguments over certain things, Harrison just didn't want to be a part of it. In fact, Gilliam said George wasn't happy doing this kind of stuff, quotes, this kind of stuff, which I guess would be just getting involved with things or getting in the arguments or just being involved with the day-to-day aspects of filmmaking. And it's interesting because he wrote a song for the film. George Harrison wrote a song for the film. It's the song at the end of the movie during the credits.
Okay.
Gilliam did not want that song in the film because he just didn't like it. Didn't think it fit in with the style of the movie or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But he couldn't say no to the guy who was financing the movie. I mean,
Right. The guy's funding it.
he wrote the song for the movie. He paid for the movie. He's going to put a song in the movie. Gilliam understood that, but they had their little back and forth. But Gilliam talked about how Harrison dealt with some of the drama that went on during the production.
Mm-hmm.
And he says the interesting way he dealt with it was writing the lyrics of the film's end titles tune, which was called Dream Away.
Okay.
Afterwards, Gilliam says, I found out those were his notes to me. It's just a song. It didn't mean anything, but there's lines in there about not being thankful and not taking up any more time. And he goes, I think he felt I was a little bit more arrogant than I should have been. And he and Dennis having mortgaged their buildings and done all this sorts of stuff to get the film made. Yeah, I should have been a bit more grateful. And that's all in the lyrics of the song.
Fantastic. I'm going to have to listen to that song after we're done with this.
So yeah, listen to the song. You'll see what Gilliam's talking about there.
Nice. So something that struck me this last time is that if you pay attention to his walls, you know, like when we were kids, we had posters of, you know, our favorite bands, shows, all that fun stuff that we like, comic book posters.
Yeah,
If
totally.
you look at his Kevin's wall, Kevin's the little kid that's the protagonist in this movie. Everything that we see, all of his adventures are pretty much posted on his wall, kind of mapping out what's going to happen in the film.
Yeah.
I just thought that was
Not just
cool. I
the
never
posters, but
noticed that.
his toys as well. Like all the
All-
toys and stuff. The cowboys, the Greek archers, the tank, the spaceman. They all show up in the movie. All these weird random things show up in the film.
Right. If you put them all, like, it's like trying to
Dude,
sell this movie. You put them all together.
The evil genius's fortress was made out of giant Lego blocks.
Which is another thing I didn't notice until this last time.
Right? That was the same for me. I didn't notice it till this last time I watched it. I was like, wait, those are giant freaking Lego bricks.
Right. I mean, and here's the thing too. The thing that makes it work, this whole thing work, that got me this last time is everything is played seriously. Nothing is played as a gag. Everything's played out as serious it can be. Like, there's a scene in it where you get to the evil genius, you get into his fortress, and the dwarves are there, and Kevin's there, and the first thing that he does is point his hand like a gun. His finger pops down, turns into a gun, and fires, and it's all played in great seriousness. Like, no one's joking about it. That's, you know, that was his weapon. They all got scared of it. It happened, and it was like, we're moving on. There we go. But I think that's what makes it keeps the magic alive in that movie. Or scenes like
for
that.
sure. Do you remember, I just kind of a random, do you remember the scene where the horse jumps out of the closet
Yes.
and how just strange that looked? That was a real horse jumping out of a closet.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
it wasn't CG. I knew that, but I thought that maybe there were some camera tricks that they used to pull it off. But they literally, over the course of several weeks, they trained a horse to jump out of the closet. What the crap?
It's the little details. Yeah, that scene was what?
There's a lot.
Not even a minute.
There's a lot of cool details in this. I mean, we already talked about like the Lego bricks, the toys and stuff, but freaking dude, the villain, the evil genius in the film, the apparatus, the hat that he wears on his head. Have you noticed that is a face hugger?
Yes. Okay. So when you told me that, because I hadn't thought about it in so long, it was right before I started watching the movie again. You said that, and I looked at it, and yes, it represents a face hugger, but it's so much more disturbing.
No, I know, but just the design. I mean, and it said that design was influenced by H.R. Geiger's work on Alien. So
right.
That did play an influence on that.
But
the fact that he wore it on like a face hugger for a hat was just so great. And it almost adds another layer to the whole thing, is like, yeah, xenomorphs could totally exist in this universe.
Right. There's nothing that said they couldn't. Like, nothing is out of bounds in this movie.
Yeah.
But like I said before, nothing is played. They're not hamming it up for the camera. It's all, this is legitimately happening. And just hold on to your seats and let's go for the ride. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. So funny. Like I said, I even want to watch it again just to find more details. Like, there's just so many little things in this film that are so fun to just pick out. It's just a vast, freaking epic adventure filled with just, I mean, you want Easter eggs in a movie, there are Easter eggs all over this thing.
Right. And Sean Connery.
Yes.
That still blows my mind to this day.
Well, they didn't think that they were going to get Sean Connery to be in the film. They just wanted a Sean Connery type person to fill the role. And Gilliam never really expected to get him to star as the king. What was the king's name? King
Agamemnon. Yep. there's actual history in this movie. And because that was Kevin's big thing, and he got to meet his one hero, which was King Agamemnon, played by none other but than Sean Connery.
Yeah, so they they just wanted the Sean Connery type. Gilliam said in an interview, he said the script actually read, "When the great warrior removes his helmet, he reveals himself to be none other than Sean Connery, or an actor of equal but cheaper stature."
Yeah, I guess they weren't really swinging for the fences as far as
They
budget
put it in.
goes.
It's explained. He explains that he put it in as a joke,
Okay.
and they never really took it seriously. But when Connery got the script, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it."
I mean, yeah.
I guess what
I'll
happened
do
was O'Brien was playing golf with Connery,
Uh-huh.
and while he's playing golf with him, he kind of just shared the concept with him, I
Uh-huh.
guess, and he liked it. So he jumped on board.
Yeah. When we get to the end, when we get to the shocking end, there's a connection between Sean Connery's character while he's going through time and the end part of.
Let's just we're in it. Let's just dive into it.
Okay, so in the end, this is what disturbed me the most, is that in the end, Kevin comes back. It was all a dream. You think you're falling for the whole, it was just a dream thing again.
Yeah.
His house is on fire. Firemen are running around. They get him out. They escape. And in the end, after they're all escaped from the house, his parents blow up.
Legit, just blow up in a giant explosion because of a bomb in a toaster oven.
You're right. A little piece of the evil genius made it back into the real world, and they decided to touch it, and boom, his parents are gone.
Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Kevin's yelling at him.
And what do the parents do? They just look at it and they're like,
they touch that shit.
Touch it. And then they explode in a massive.
So this is what struck me about it.
Fire and guts and blood.
Right.
Actually, that all kind of disintegrated.
It just left with the little shoes smoking at the end.
Yeah.
But one of the firemen that saves Kevin from his burning house, is Sean Connery.
Yeah.
And he kind of winks at him like, yeah, it's me. And then leaves. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, in the middle of the movie when he's with King Agamemnon, that's like everything he's ever wanted. He has everything. He's with his hero, and the time bandits come and essentially kidnap him, take him away.
Yeah.
And break his heart. And then I was like, you know what? That had to happen. He was just showing him that you're strong enough to make it on your own.
You can make it without your parents. Your parents just blew up, but you're going to be fine, kid. You got this.
He was just setting him up, getting him ready for his parents to blow the F up. That's great.
And, the executive producer of the film, Dennis O'Brien, was completely against blowing up Kevin's parents. He did not want to put it in. Gilliam had to fight to keep it in.
Okay.
The only reason why O'Brien was convinced that the blowing up of the parents would stay in the film, that came after an advanced screening of the movie was held for an audience full of kids. And the children were asked what their favorite moment of the movie was, and they excitedly proclaimed the parents being blown up. The kids loved the parents being blown up. I actually forgot that the parents blew up until I watched it as a teenager, right? Like when you watch it, you're just like, whoa, they blew up the freaking parents.
So there's a lot of weird, crazy stuff that made it in. Do you know of anything that didn't make it in?
Well, hold on just a sec.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, just one more thing on the parents blowing up, because this is such a hot topic of discussion. It's very controversial. You can't be blowing up parents in movies.
Yes.
But the demise of the parents.
Yes.
The reason they blew up is that is their punishment. They were punished for being uncaring and neglectful. And they died because they ignored Kevin and they didn't listen to him about the freaking toaster oven. Had they listened to Kevin, they would still be alive. But they are so ignorant and bad parents that they made the choices that would blow themselves. They basically blew themselves up because of the type of people they were.
Right. They deserved it. He was telling them, don't touch it. And they're like complete idiots. They're like the kids that when you tell somebody, hey, don't touch that, it's hot. And the first person that walks over and says, oh, it's not that. Yeah, it's hot. So they pretty much did it to themselves.
They did. Totally.
Dummies.
Oh, the other thing that I wanted to bring up before
Yes.
it's on
Yes.
is like Steven Spielberg shot E.T., Terry Gilliam also shot this movie in a low camera angles throughout to give the audience the perspective of a dwarf or a child.
That's cool. I mean, because that's your protagonist. That's your adventurers. That's where they're seeing the world. So that's exactly where we should see the world also.
Yes.
I'm down with that. I like it.
But in answer to your earlier question, yes, there were scenes that were cut out of this film, scenes that never made it. They ended up on the cutting room floor, and Gilliam has said that he believes all of the cut footage has been lost. So there are scenes that have been in there, and I actually went looking for these scenes online. I couldn't find them. And then I read that Gilliam was like, yeah, you're not going to find them. But in the published screenplay, there's several black and white photos from scenes that don't appear in the final cut.
Okay.
These scenes include a Spider-Woman sequence, the king giving Kevin a knife, which is later used when Og takes it from Kevin's satchel to unlock their cage.
Oh, he ends up twisting it. Yeah.
Other deleted scenes include Kevin waking up at night to find his bedroom flooded with water and a pirate ship sailing through his window and the bandits trying to rob a bank in a 22nd century London.
Yeah. As funny as that might be, I'm kind of glad they stayed in the past.
But dude, this movie was so insane and so crazy that it honestly, fine. If you want to take us to 22nd century London and rob a bank, I'm all for it. I'd love to see that scene. I would love to see the scene with the pirate ship sailing through the window. That would be awesome.
Yeah. I would have loved to see that all. But that's where my feelings come into play. I feel like there should have been a second. I always felt like Time Bandits ended like...
Well, you're getting ahead of yourself, Billy. We're going to get there.
Nice.
We are going to talk about the several sequels that were in development. But I do want to talk about one of the deleted scenes involving the Spider-Woman because they actually have some details on that. So one of the scenes that ended up out of the movie took place in the Land of Legends. And this place involved two spider women who basically used their webs to catch beautiful young blonde knights and keep them for themselves. And Gilliam says it was a funny scene, but it was just one of those things that they had to cut out because they ran out of money. It sounds like it would have been fun. They found a way around it and figured things out. But in the end, that's just one of the scenes that ended up on the cutting room floor. But it would have been interesting to see what they would have done with these Spider-Woman characters.
Right? It seems to fit in the world that you are already in. You've seen them on ships with ogres that eventually the ship turns out to be the hat of a giant that walks you through a desert. It's crazy. It would have fit.
It would have been fun to see some of these deleted scenes.
Oh, yeah.
The kid who played Kevin, his name was Craig Warnock. And he has one of those crazy Hollywood stories, right? Because he never meant to get the part in the first place. He just tagged along to the audition with his brother. And Craig ended up auditioning, and Gilliam liked him, so Gilliam cast him in the role.
That's rough. His poor brother.
He said he's a bright kid. I think it was the first day of shooting, they threw him in the deep end of the pool by having him act alongside Sean Connery.
Right.
And that kind of broke him in.
Go play with 007 for a while.
Yes, seriously.
Oh, man.
It's crazy. But it's interesting, though, because the kid, he only did one other movie after this. He did a movie in 1983 called To the Lighthouse.
Uh-huh.
And that was it. He only did 2 movies in his career.
Well, I mean, the kid was good. He was really convincing in the movie. He never took away from the story. His acting was never so atrocious or so over the top that it took away from the movie. He just played natural. And I think that's what makes the movie work.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like the whole Charlie Bucket from
Right.
from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yep. Or Chunk from Goonies.
Yeah, exactly. All the great kid actors that never did anything again.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
cool.
Craig Warnock was one of them. And I tried to find some information on him, and there wasn't really much. He's got like 2 kids or something. That's really all I could find.
I tried to look some stuff up on him. He's got an IMDb page, but mostly it's just him being in background footage of the making of and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of just a little interesting tidbit on the lead actor of the movie. Never really did anything else.
Just never did it. And I can understand that. Acting's not easy, man. And if your heart's not into it, there's no sense in torturing yourself.
That is the truth, my friend.
Yeah.
True words have never been spoken.
I am pretty deep.
Hey, you are.
So, back to something I mentioned. I always felt at the end of the movie, like it was like setting it up for a sequel. I always felt like there needed to be a sequel. And I've always heard there was rumors of sequels or someone's doing a sequel.
Yeah.
Do you have any information on that?
There were rumors. Well, not rumors. There were sequels that were being planned. Terry Gilliam wanted to make a sequel.
Of course.
And in fact, he developed multiple variations of a sequel over the years.
Nice.
So one of the first attempts was actually in 1996 when Terry Gilliam teamed up with Charles McCowan, and they collaborated on a script for Time Bandits 2 and it would have brought back most of the original cast. There were some exceptions like David Rappaport and Tiny Ross, who had died a few years earlier. And then Jack Purvis had been paralyzed in a car accident. So his character was written to be in kind of a similar state that he was in now. But when Purvis died, the project was shelved completely. Like that project just went away.
Yeah, you couldn't really do it without those guys. I mean,
it'd be hard.
You got the leader of the group.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, you can't go without him.
Yeah. But the premise of this sequel was just insane. Nice. So, okay. So the movie, Gilliam wanted a $30 million budget for the movie. $30 million. That's a lot of that's a lot of moolah, considering the first film was only made for $5 million.
Right.
But no one wanted to give Gilliam $30 million to make a Time Bandit sequel. But the plot of this version of the film was about saving the world from God's wrath on the millennium. So So
he's just done. He's done with Earth.
Yeah, so God had bottled out on the first 1,000 years because he was going to destroy the place. Gilliam said it was a disaster, and now comes the year 2000. He's finally going to do it. And God is totally a schizophrenic at this point in this version of the story. He's got the devil as a hand puppet that he talks to all the time. God has a devil hand puppet throughout the movie. And Gilliam makes a point to say this was way before South Park and the school teacher had his puppet. Right? He just wanted to point that out. Like, I had this idea first. And there were going to be new Time Bandits, basically the daughters of the old guys who have worked their way up through the creation departments and are finally getting equal pay as women. He says it's a really good tale.
And I love that because this last time watching it, I finally understood and heard where they were, like what their jobs were before they stole the map, and they were there to create the trees on Earth.
Yeah.
And they got bored with it, so they decided to become essentially time bandits. They wanted to rob all throughout time and get rich.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, they got demoted to small bushes and shrubs. And I thought that was fantastic. I was like, all right. It was just a great line, and I felt like it should be explored more. So, I mean, I kind of wish the sequel that he's talking about came out.
I love the fact, I love the concept that God has a devil hand puppet that he's talking to all the time. And the puppet talks in its own voice. That is
Makes
just
sense.
so ridiculous. And so Terry Gilliam on so many levels.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways you could have gone with it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fantastic.
And there was a second draft to that script, and it's explained that this second draft, it opens up with two dwarves, Mox and her friend Tangle, working on the bureaucracy that runs all of creation, shredding files on animals as they become extinct.
Well, this one's gone.
Yeah, pretty much. They're super busy, and as they're doing it, they overhear a conversation between the Supreme Being and his supreme opposite, Number, who are planning to turn off creation at the end of the millennium. Mox decides she and Tangle need to hunt out her father, Strutter, one of the original Time Bandits, to see if he has any suggestions on how to stop this from happening. So they end up finding the rest of the Time Bandits. They're out of work. They're scrounging for a living. Strutter is joined by Fidget and Og, as well as Og's son Tubby. Another former Time Bandit, Wally, he's despised by the group because he's moved up into creation's upper management and has been put in charge of the accounting department. The characters of Randall and Vermin from the first film are mentioned in passing, but there's no indication given as to their fate in the story. Both David Rappaport and Tiny Ross, they passed away. And Jack Purvis's part was written especially for him, knowing that he was paralyzed from a car accident, like we said earlier, and he's in a wheelchair. But when he passed away, that's when they ended up shelving the project. Other than that, the group decides that they need to see exactly how creation was saved from being shut off at the end of the first millennium in order to save this time around.
Mm-hmm.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
They're going to try to recreate whatever happened before
Exactly.
just to get it so he can forget about it again.
Yes. So they go to the Supreme Being's treasury. They steal a key from Wally, get the map that the bandits used in the first film, and while rummaging around the treasury, they accidentally knock over the Ark of the Covenant, which was
nice.
Which was supposed to look exactly like the Ark of the Covenant from Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's
fitting.
what they wanted to use, which would have been so great on so many levels.
That would have been awesome.
But so they knock over the Ark of the Covenant, summoning the guards, finding some time portals, lying in a stack of panes of glass. The group make their escape into history. Before we go any further, just so you know, we got this information on the sequels from a script review for Time Bandits 2 on filmbuffsonline.com. So this is where this information is coming from. The group's first stop on their journey is the bedroom of Polly, who is an 11-year-old girl who spends most of her time in internet chat rooms. This is when internet chat rooms were a thing. Before social media kind of took over all that stuff. You know, kids used to go on internet chat rooms to talk to people, right?
Right.
I guess that's what they were doing in 1996. Were you ever in any internet chat rooms, Billy? Did you
know
ever
what?
get into the internet chat room scene?
No. No, because okay, so the time the internet chat rooms were around was the time that you and me and our buddies all got into World of Warcraft, the original World of Warcraft.
Yep.
And we all got sucked into that world, so we never got into the chat room thing because we're too busy,
Yeah.
you know.
I never got into the chat room scene. It just wasn't my thing.
No.
We were always out doing stuff in the 90s. Like we were
Yeah.
always out. Computers weren't really a part of our lives at that time.
Exactly. So if we were on the computer, it was let's get our orcs to defeat
Yeah, it was.
everybody
I
else.
was either on the computer reading "Ain't It Cool News" or,
Right.
or what else? What else was it to do? Looking up movie times.
Looking up movie times because you and I had an obsession with watching every single movie out every week.
Anyway, we're getting off topic. Okay.
Yeah.
Back
to where we're at.
Okay. So this 11-year-old girl, Polly, who spends more time in internet chat rooms than with her working mom or stay-at-home laid-off father. With the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse hot on their trail, the Bandits and Polly set off through history on a trip similar to the first film. And on their journey, they encounter a cleanliness-obsessed pirate captain. They inadvertently participate in Joan of Arc's capture and discover that Julius Caesar's assassination was faked so that he could get away from his shrewish wife.
Copernicus.
I mean,
That's
this is just so awesome on so many levels. It's so great. Finally, the bandits discover that they are the ones who saved creation at the end of the first millennium. And so they have to try again. Just before the switch to turn off creation's throne, the real supreme being returns, having been delayed while measuring infinity. You know, that would
you do.
Measuring infinity could definitely hold you up. The other supreme being, the one with the hand puppet, was just his servant who had gone crazy trying to keep things going for his boss. Polly is returned to her bedroom where her parents wake her just in time for the Millennium New Year Eve countdown. Downstairs, she meets her mother's new boss, a man who looks suspiciously like the real supreme being. Gilliam loves bringing back these characters at the end of these movies, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But while the first half of the script sets the story in motion, the second half contains a few logical problems that explain that specifically the Time Bandits run into themselves one day in the past, and this first group successfully stops their past selves from making a mistake before the two groups interact for a few scenes.
Of course. Because why not?
Don't even think about the cause and effect in this sequence, as it's just kind of thrown out the window.
What is not thrown out the window when you're talking about Terry Gilliam?
But it's still like, I read this and I'm thinking, like, is that kind of like what happens in, would you say that's close to kind of what happens in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's no cause and effect when it comes to time travel in these movies.
So Gilliam's been working on these films over the years. He's wanted to get the sequel off the ground, but in 2001, Gilliam revealed that he had a deal struck with Hallmark Entertainment. Of all places, Hallmark Entertainment wanted to make two-hour Time Bandits specials.
That's insane. I hope they weren't going to be Christmas specials. Oh man.
It would have been basically a 4-hour miniseries. And
that's crazy.
And from what I understand, it seemingly abandoned the original sequel storyline. So everything that we talked about just gone. In this version, it picks up with Kevin, who is now in his mid-30s, and he's got a couple kids, and life has never been as exciting as it was then. And then that's where it starts.
Okay.
And that's basically all the information we have on that version.
It would have been fun.
Yeah, it would have been a blast. But yeah, so that never happened. Gilliam says the network pulled the plug on the project shortly after 9/11. And that just was something that they just felt they didn't want to move forward with at the time.
Right.
Years and years later, that was 2001. Then in 2018, it was reported that Time Bandits would be turned into a TV series for Apple TV+. From what I understand, that project is still in development, but I have not heard anything on it since it was announced. All I know is that Gilliam was involved with it. He is working on it, I guess. And that version of the sequel is about a middle-aged New York cop who was once a hero who has grown fat and cynical and is in the middle of a breakdown. He ends up in a child's fantasy world where the rules of the mean streets of New York no longer apply. The best way to kill a dragon is no longer a gun, but a tree branch you think is a sword. And that's the way it was explained. And I love that. I love that he's going back to that imaginative state of childhood, but doing it with an adult instead of a kid. So you have in the first one, the first film, it focuses on this kid who is just full of life and full of adventure and wanting to get out and go on a grand journey. Mm-hmm. And in this sequel, it's about someone that we can relate to, an older guy whose life has just beat him down over the years. His life is just blah. But then he finds that inner child in him, that imagination, and that brings him back out of this funk that he's in. And he's the thought of going on an adventure is back and brewing in his soul. I love that. I think it's a cool way to continue that story in a different way, not really using any of the other characters, but this is obviously going to be a complete standalone sequel set. I imagine it's set in the same world that the original was set in, but there's no details on that. We don't know how this will connect to the original, if it even does connect to the original, but I dig the story.
Right. And the thing that's cool about it is something I read on this sequel for Apple TV is that Taika Waititi is joining Terry Gilliam in making this series.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome. I mean, if this series is still in development, I can't wait to see it. I am stoked. I would love to see a sequel or another Time Bandits story told. And if that involves an older guy who's trying to find his inner child to go on an adventure and live this fantasy that he's had in his head all these years, bring it on, man. That's my life right now.
No, it totally works. And they could play it off of like what Kevin would have been like when he was older. Sometimes your imagination can heal you, can bring you out of your broken down states and bring you up.
Yeah.
To where you need to be.
And I would think that like I initially thought, okay, maybe the cop is Kevin, but then like, why would Kevin grow up to be a New York City cop?
Hey, bro, kid was left alone after his parents got murked, so I mean, he could do whatever he wants.
As far as Kevin's future goes, I can only imagine after watching his parents blow up that he ended up in a mental institute.
I hope for the best for Kevin.
After going through that insane journey and having it end with his parents exploding in front of him. And no one around him acting like it's a big deal. Like, oh yeah, it happened. Sorry, kid.
Everyone's just standing there looking at the smoking shoes, going, what the hell? And no one's looking at the kid. Hey, are you okay? All Sean Connery does is turn around and wink at him and drive away in the fire truck. No one gives a crap.
I mean, I think I think there needs to be a sequel that involves Danny Torrance from Dr. Sleep and have these two guys go on an adventure together. Danny Torrance and Kevin heading out on an adventure through the universe.
Fantastic.
Together with a time with a map that takes them through history and time and space. Bring it on.
Ghosts.
Someone make that.
I'd go see it. I'd be the first in line.
But that's what we have for Time Bandits. These are just some things that we found while doing some research. It was a lot of fun going through this one again. It was a lot of fun diving in and learning all this stuff about this film. And it makes me love it even more.
It does. And for those of you who have never seen it, if you're listening to this and going, this sounds crazy, please go watch it.
Dude, if you haven't seen Time Bandits, go watch it, man. Whoa. Go enjoy this amazing film.
And just go into it with an open mind, because things are going to happen. Go with it. It all has a point, kind of. It's just fun to watch. So fun to watch.
And again, like we like to end our podcast with a quote from a movie. And one of my favorite quotes, Billy, and if you have a favorite quote too, you might as well share it. But I'm going to share mine right now, because
okay.
This is just great. Okay. So Randall says, in the Middle Ages, 500 years before the man we just robbed was even born. Strutter says, fantastic. And Randall says, try that one in a court of law. So they robbed the man 500 years before the man was born. And he's like, try that one in a court of law. Is that a good quote, Billy?
Yes, because it pretty much sums up what the movie's about.
Oh, good. I don't know if you found a quote that you like, but if you did, you can share it. There's a lot, but that's one that I never caught before, and it just made me bust up laughing when I heard it.
Okay, so I do have one quote.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so for some reason when I watched this with my boys, we found the invisible barrier to just be hilarious. Just the whole scene where they all run up and they squish their faces up against, like, it made perfect sense for the movie. But in it, I started cracking up because it was a line that I had never paid attention to before.
Dude, I love that about rewatching movies. Sometimes lines just stick out that you don't know, that you never realized were in the movie. Right. But go ahead. I'm going to let you say your quote.
That was perfect because, okay, so in it, the actor who plays Fidget is Kenny Baker, who is famous for being in R2-D2 in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
When they run into the barrier, Kevin, the kid, goes, it's some kind of invisible barrier. And up until this point, Fidget has had barely any lines in the movie. And they just focus on him and he goes, oh, that's what an invisible barrier looks like. Yep. Sure does, buddy.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
It's just like, man, the guy has next to no lines in the movie. And that's what he gets. I was like, that's perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so Joey and I have talked about it. We've talked about it in multiple episodes so far. We just haven't talked about it in this one.
We talked about it in one.
Yeah, we're going to say multiple. Our next episode is going to be behind the scenes and little known facts about the movie Poltergeist.
Ah, yes. The great Steven Spielberg. Tobe Hooper.
Tobe Hooper.
That's going to be a fun one.
It's going to be fun. It's made me scared of anyone named Carol Ann for the rest of my life. So thanks for joining us, guys. We really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the Secret Level podcast.
Yes, share and leave comments and stuff.
Good or bad, we want to hear it.
Mostly
You're not going to
good.
hurt our feelings. Yes, please good. But if they're bad, make them at least entertaining. Thank you all for listening, and we will be looking for you next time in the Secret Level.
Yep. See you, everybody.
Bye.